As we all know, onboarding new employees can be a complex process, and ensuring that all necessary documents are in place is crucial to the success of the process. Hi everyone, this is Maheen from Canadian SME Small Business Magazine. We got the chance to chat with Kiljon Shukullari, the HR Advisory Manager within Peninsula Group of Companies, Bright HR. An experienced HR professional and a certified human resources leader, Kiljon Shukullari supports Bright HR clients. Through his years of experience in talent management and HR, Kiljon has gained considerable knowledge of the most relevant topics, trends, and policies, the expertise he now brings to the clients. In his current role, Kiljon oversees HR advisors on consultations with potential prospects across all provinces where Bright HR operates. Kiljon also provides support to their HR advice team on day-to-day inquiries as needed. In this podcast, Kiljon joins us to discuss the essential documents required for new employees in 2023. Kiljon will be sharing his insights on the important documents that employers need to have in place when hiring new employees and why these documents are critical for both the employer and the employee. Hi, Kiljon. On behalf of Canadian SME, I'd like to welcome you to our small business podcast. How are you today?
Very good, Maheen, and thanks for having me.
Very pleased to have you with us this afternoon. Now, Kiljan, with the ongoing pandemic and the world transitioning towards a more digitized era, there have been several changes in how organizations manage their employee records. In this episode, we would need your help to really explore the paperwork employers must provide to their new hires and discuss how companies can really streamline their documentation process for a smoother onboarding experience. Now, before we really get into it, we would love to know more about you. Can you start by telling us about your role within the Peninsula Group of Companies, Bright HR, and your experience working for Bright HR clients?
I joined the Peninsula Group back in 2017. Prior to this, I have been part of larger corporations, but I found this opportunity with this team because I was able to more specifically assist in small to medium-sized businesses, help with their HR structure, and now with the Bright HR team, helping them digitize any documentation that they have and also streamline their process when it comes to HR and health and safety.
Mhm. Now, Gillian, as the world of work continues to evolve, so do the essential documents that companies must provide to their new employees in 2023. What are some of the essential documents that companies need to provide to new employees? And are there any changes or updates from previous years?
Yeah, this is a very good question. There's many documents that we would recommend. Most of the documents are required when it comes to the health and safety side of things, but also there are documents like a contract of employment, employee handbook, which is a collection of your policies that you need to have in the hands, for lack of better terms, of your new employees from day one, if not earlier. You also want to have a tool that manages this whole environment, usually a software similar to the one that we do advertise, which is the Bright HR software. This helps you keep in one place and organize all of the documents that you need and also any updates that you need to make throughout the employer-employee relationship.
hmm Now, in addition to these standard documents, companies may also need to provide, other paperwork depending on the industry and the employee's position. One of the most important documents for new employees is the employment contract. Kilian, can you tell us more about what clauses should be included in an employment contract?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we noticed, especially during the pandemic, as you mentioned, was the lack of a layoff clause for most of the contract of employment. A lot of the employers thought that that was just a default by the employment standards. Unfortunately, it's something that you need to specifically mention in your agreement between yourself and the employee to make sure that it is easily enforceable if need be. So if your business is going through a period of, uh, work, less work, or a period where you need to close your business or slow down, you make sure that you have that clause in your contract of employment, or at that point, you have to enter into an agreement with the employee to accept the terms of the layoff. That's one particular clause. Probationary period is another one. Your terms when it comes to the hours and how much you will be paid for the hours worked for a particular role. When we talk about non-solicitation, but also one of the most crucial clauses that we noticed creates a lot of problems if disputed is our termination clause. Is there going to be a termination for cause, without cause, or a resignation by the employee? These need to be clearly defined in an employment agreement. If not, it will create a lot of issues and concerns and may come to what we call interpretation at that point if it's not clear. And you will have to follow common law entitlements at that point, which is a lot higher than the employment standards.
Right, right. The details you provided, it really helps to establish a clear understanding between the employer and employee, minimizing any confusion or misunderstandings that could arise during the employment relationship. Now, Kilyon, in addition to the employment contract, what other documents should companies provide to new employees on day zero and within the first week of employment?
Absolutely. So I'll just carry on from the last question because a contract of employment is that base, their cornerstone for any type of relationship. The reason is you want to have as little surprises as possible. And that's where the additional documentation comes in. So the initial terms and conditions would be the ones listed on the employment agreement. But then you want to talk about a manual for health and safety. You want to talk about an employee handbook, a collection of your policies. You want to talk about the different trainings that fall under the employment standard or the occupational health and safety standard. So you want to make sure that you have your AODA. You want to have sure you have your 4-step, 5-step with regards to the supervisors. You want to talk about violence and harassment training and also a specific policy about that. All of these need to be provided to the employee from day one, and you need to constantly keep track. And the best way to do that is through a software that it's easily accessible from anywhere. In the
Mhm.
world that we live now, the remote work that kind of came to be known during the pandemic, it's not a surprise anymore. It's something that's going to be a constant, maybe not at the same level that it was before, but it's something that will be around for a while, and we need to be prepared for that. Technology offers us the opportunity, especially through this software like Bright HR, to make sure that we are changing the way that we approach conversations, what kind of tools we use, and how quickly we apply change throughout the organization and communicate change.
Absolutely. Talking about remote work, mandatory health and safety training has become very crucial for all employees in 2023, especially. Now, this training provides essential information on workplace hazards, emergency procedures, and safety protocols, ensuring that all new employees are equipped with the knowledge and skills they need to know to work to be able to work safely and avoid any accidents. Now, Kilian, you mentioned that with so many companies now operating remotely or offering hybrid work options, we would love to know more about the importance of mandatory health and safety training.
Yeah, I mean, there's no hiding it that the requirements have increased by a lot, to be honest. And this is something that a lot of employers need to keep in mind. We talked about the different trainings earlier that are required. But the main thing is to be able to track at what level the individuals have completed the training and what level the individuals have maybe requiring or required to do maybe a retraining at times. Any episodes within your environment, any change in the way you operate in your environment might need for you to tweak the trainings. So when it comes to WIMIS, when it comes to AODA, when it comes to the 4-step and 5-step, when it comes to the violence and harassment in the workplace, all of these policies have to also be adapted to the way that your organization is built, what type of positions you have, what kind of interactions are happening. There needs to be clear guidelines as to where the individuals will go in case of a concern, who do they reach out, and so forth. And again, going back to the tool that we provide, that really allows you to interact with your employees in a more smooth way. If there's any concerns, if there's any incidents, they can report this live on Bright HR and Bright Safe, and make sure that you are on top of the requirements and obligations you have under the health and safety standards everywhere, to be honest, in Canada. And a time when there is a concern, when there is an injury, whenever there's an incident, if you are receiving a visit from the ministry, if you're receiving a concern or a claim document from an employee, you need to make sure that you have all your records in order, not just up-to-date documentation, but also steps that you have followed to deal with that type of incident or occurrence.
hmm Now, Huyan, from what we've discussed so far, you've covered all the points covering the importance, the emphasis on the proper documentation required by employers in 2023. Are there any risks or consequences of not having proper documentation and paperwork in place that companies should be aware of when providing essential documents to new employees?
Absolutely. A lot of the scenarios that we assist with, because from a Bright HR standpoint, we provide documentation templates, we provide live support as well with our HR advisors, Canadian based, but also the software itself, what it allows and what it provides is allows for an opportunity to have everything in one place. So, as I said, having the documents in place, contracts of employment and employee handbook, which technically speaking, in Canada, they're not a legal requirement. But if you don't have them, and going back to your question, that's where you run into the risk of non-compliance with certain expectations. If you are taken to court or there's a claim, you might have a concern of ambiguity in the way that you've communicated expectations with your employees, and that's where usually the friction will start. So the risk is that if you don't have proper contracts of employment and employee handbooks in place, you might have to interpret entitlements for an individual in the case of a termination or wrongful dismissal under a different standard, which is a lot more harsh on the employer, which is the common law entitlement. So those are the risks. So instead of you having to pay under the minimum entitlements of the law, which is usually capped at 8 weeks or so, then you might have to go a lot higher, maybe months for an individual that has been with you for a short period of time. So that's the risk financially. There's also a risk from a cultural standpoint, your culture within your business, inconsistency in the way you approach conversations, inconsistency in the way you approach employee relations might create a toxic environment. So everything is when everything is in writing, it's a lot easier to follow through. But from a health and safety standpoint, missing the trainings, not having the right documentation, employees not being able to retrieve documentation. So maybe your manual is only located in the lunchroom of an office where only half of your team will show up. Most of them are remote or they're on the road or on site. That creates a bit of a concern. So you need to have a clear understanding and clear lines of communication with your team. And a software really allows you that because it's accessible from anywhere: phone, PC, tablet, laptop, wherever your team is able to go online.
hmm And I feel like everything is so interconnected that it is so important to establish a very solid foundation for a successful employment relationship while also meeting legal and regulatory requirements. Kiljon, as we wrap up our conversation today on this great and very important topic, what advice would you give companies to ensure they provide all the necessary documents to new employees and stay compliant with employment laws and regulations?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start by again introducing the software that we provide because it really is going to be the basis of you building that ecosystem of support for your team and also for sake of compliance, to be honest. I'm proud to say that we've reached 6,000 clients that we support in Canada. These are all employers of different sizes and different industries, and they've all found it very useful to have in one place all their employee agreements, all their policies, all their documentation when it comes to other forms and templates that you might need throughout the employer-employee relationship, but also your trainings, being readily available and also to be easily communicated to your team from day one and throughout. Being able to do this will just create a bit of a level of security as well for you, that you are compliant, you're following the guidelines, and if need be, we do have the support that you can call the advice line or the health and safety line to make sure that anything or any question you might have, we are able to answer for you. And you don't have to do this alone. That's why we introduce tools like this and software and support like this, because you have the access you have access to HR professionals that can help you at every step of the way, making sure that you have a safe work environment for everyone and also a successful business.
Thank you, Killian, for being so thorough with the process. You really provided some valuable insights into the importance of proper documentation and compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Bye for now.
A big thank you to our guest, Kiljon Shukullari, for joining us and sharing his expertise on the essential documents required for new employees in 2023. We hope you enjoyed it. Once again, we would like to thank our exclusive banking partner, RBC, our shipping partner, UPS, and our exclusive accounting software partner, Xero, for supporting this initiative. Please do share the podcast and feel free to check out the other episodes. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business Magazine to stay up to date on all our upcoming events and get the top business insights from industry leaders. This is Maheen, your host for the Small Business Podcast.